Hello, everybody. This is Dr. Amir. I'm back with another entry in the Goon Profile series, my favorite thing I get to do on this channel. Today, I'm with Eugene the Magnificent. Eugene, how are you?
I am quite well, and hello.
I'd love to get more of your background to start, but it wasn't that long ago that you were on the True Narrative podcast talking about this as well. So, however abbreviated you want to make it, your call. And I'd specifically love to know more about what made you go from lurker to a goon.
Okay. That was really how I started. I didn't even really plan on getting involved with George. When I was working, I did construction, mainly floors. I sand and refinished hardwood floors. And one of the requirements for that job is we have to have ear protection. And one of the options was we could have headsets that played music. And instead of listening to music, I would listen to. It started with Prank Access, and then George came on there, and I saw a bunch of George's stuff on that channel, and I was like, I remember thinking like, there's no way that this person is real with just how they act. And then that caused me to do a deeper dive, and I found Sean, and I found the Gorgeous George Sucks stuff. I found the True Narrative podcast, and I found Gorgeous George Has a Negative Bank Account. And I put those on a playlist and just listened to them for better part of almost a year and a half, constantly listening to all of the George stuff. And then I found out about the Jamie situation. And I'd always been pretty up in arms about what he did with her and to her, very vocal in the Discord. And then it came to be where, like, I remember someone saying in the Discord, like, the Saunders calls are coming to an end. And people were like, well, what are we going to do? And I said, well, I originally thought about doing like a variety show similar to what George did as a parody and be George, but it didn't feel right. I did a couple recordings. I never showed them, and they weren't good. And I think, like, with the way I operate, I'm better at commentary. And I was like, well, I'm thinking about doing a live stream about George, going over all of his shows and all of the calls, but I'd like to have someone to work with. And then Meth said, he's like, I thought about doing the same thing too, and I don't have anyone to work with. So that was where Fielden's was born.
Okay, yeah, that's super interesting. You know, we have a lot of really unique content creators in this community. I'm curious why a live podcast drew you as far as how you wanted to present yourself and your content.
Well, a lot of the people that I watched, like, I really liked the way True Narrative podcast was set up. I like that, like, questions, answers, interviewing people, having guests. I like that idea. I was also very much influenced by Howard Stern. As funny as that is, I'm a big fan, or was a big fan of his. I'm not a fan too much of his recent stuff, but I always really liked that. It was actually a dream of mine was to go to broadcasting school to try to do what he did. And when I was younger, people said I had a voice for radio, like I could probably make it with that. And now radio's kind of dying, and YouTube's the way to go.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I definitely agree that you have a great voice for radio. Do you have any plans to evolve your podcasting beyond Gorgeous George and related content?
It is. I always branch out to like different topics. Like Roger kind of was just born out of this, and it just kind of happened. But aside from just locals themselves, I like talking about people who abuse and take advantage of the DMCA system. That has always been a very passionate thing with me, because I think there's a lot of issues with that, and there's a lot of people who abuse it, which George is one of them, or was one of them. And that kind of led me on to, like, Acer Thorn, if you're familiar with that, because that was a big thing with the Fielden's channel, and like current issues with that. But I also was doing a late night stream. I have like a lot of different content because I'm experimenting, seeing what people like. Of just like random topics, like what's kind of what's the word? I'm having a brain for it. Like paranormal type stuff, occult stuff like that.
Oh.
It's more of a serious live stream, unlike the Gorgeous George one, where it's serious. I mean, we do talk about serious stuff and the history of George, but there's also a lot of joking and stuff. Whereas in the late night ones, it's not as much.
Have you recorded any of those yet?
Yeah, that's the Night Owl streams. Yeah,
it's the Night Owl.
Yep. I need to put it in a playlist so it's easier for people to find.
So on the GG saga, why do you think it's gone on for so long, and why have you been engaged in it for so long?
His psyche is fascinating, to be honest. How someone can be so non-self-aware of how they act, of the horrible stuff that they do, and continue to do, even when when George is trying to defend himself, he continues to just say and do horrible stuff and use that as a justification. It's weird. I have not ever seen anyone like George before, and probably will not see again. He is very unique in this aspect, in my opinion.
He certainly is a once-in-a-lifetime lolcow. From a psychological standpoint, in your opinion, why do you troll George?
Now, there's some things that I do. I think I'm kind of like in the same boat with you. I don't consider myself really a troll. I do some trollish stuff, like the domain name thing. Mm-hmm. But along with that, like there's legal aspects to this as well, where it's like, I am in the right here. I went through the right process. What I do is I cover George, and I comment on the things that he's done and the things he's talking about in the shows, and I speak out of truth. And that is really because what I know of a narcissist, and having dealt with one most of my life, is the truth fucking terrifies them. They do not like operating without their mask. Mm-hmm. So I'm always trying to, I guess, unmask George for who he really is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And that gives us a good segue into one of the main topics I wanted to cover in this. You have talked before about having a deep personal background and experience living with a narcissist in your life. Mm-hmm. Can you share however much you feel comfortable sharing for anyone new about your specific background and history dealing with a narcissist?
Yeah, he's not diagnosed, by the way. This is he won't see anyone, so it's hard to get a proper diagnosis of this. But
thank you for clarifying.
Mm-hmm. So it's a diagnosis that I've looked into, and he fits the descriptors too.
Understood.
And this would be my father, and I'm gonna be like very candid and very open with this. My father is a horrible narcissist to the point of, like, he was very abusive, and not just like verbally, I mean physically. Growing up with him was very, very hard. If you did not agree with what he said, you were having an attitude. If you had an attitude, he would hit you. And I mean, this was like from 5 up until, like, there's a lot to unpack with this. I ended up living with my parents until I was close to 23. And I'll get into why that is as well. With him, it was always, he would find ways to, like, with my brother and my sister, because I'm the oldest of the 3, he would find our weaknesses. He would find what triggers us. And this is why I think I'm pretty decent at not getting triggered with other people, like online. I've got a lot of practice with it, and these people aren't my father or anyone that I'm in a relationship with, so it's a little bit easier to distance myself as well. But he would find how to cut you down, and he would hone in on that. And I've seen the same shit with George, and that's why I get pissed off with George, because he does it to Kevin, he does it to Jamie, he's done it to Roger. He finds their weaknesses and what they're insecure about and hones in on them and just constantly attacks. And mine, and I'm going to be very honest, and I can deal with it now, so it's not anything that I'm too worried about overexposing myself. Mine was my intelligence. I was always never smart enough. I would fail at everything, and that held me back for a long time. Like a lot of people, they go through their high school experience. Like I dropped out. I took a job at fucking McDonald's, and this also had to go in because my father was a heavy drinker too. And most of the money and finances that would be brought in, it would go to his drinking habit. So that would leave us in arrears or not eating. So I took a job to make sure that we could eat. So those bills were being paid as well. And it was a supplement to their income. And that was why it was important to my father that I was in the house for as long as I was, instead of like most normal people, 18, 19, going to high school, going to college, moving out, all that. I was kind of stuck there. And there was a lot of reasons for it, not just financially. I was very worried about my brother and sister. Being the oldest, I took a protective role with them because my father would try stuff like that with them. And again, if you would disagree with him, especially when we were in our teens, he would get very abusive. And once we hit to our teens, it wasn't no longer like, serious like whoopings. It was full on fists. And that was just normal everyday life with us. And he really pulled the narcissistic stuff and more like gaslighting and controlling in a more manipulative sense, and not so much physical when we all got older, because he was aging too. There was a point where like he physically couldn't control us anymore, so we would do it more with the mental. And he did that to my mom to a point where she would allow this kind of stuff to go down in the house. And it's really fucked up because I see a lot of the similarities with George's side. And the thing is, I always use the excuse, well, he's an alcoholic with my father, whereas in George isn't. And he does the same shit. So it's like even more so that I get upset with him. And like I would hit 18, or I hit 18. I did not have a high school education at the time. I do now. I worked very hard with that. My wife was a big help with that. But I would stay there pretty much. I was a supplemental income, and it was important to him to have me there. And my wife even says, Nurse Joy, even says that it sounds like I was raised in a cult lifestyle as well. So it's like, I don't really share this stuff too much. So, but it's really triggering to me to see how George operates and see how George works with other people, because it's very, like, I see those similarities as well. And it makes me honestly really dislike the guy. And I feel a little bit justified messing with him the way that I do. But yeah,
it's certainly hard not to justify trolling George because he's such an awful person. It's hard not to justify making fun of him or doing something that affects his personal life negatively as consequence. Yeah, I'm real sorry to hear about that experience growing up with your father, and I really appreciate you being so bluntly honest about it. I hope it's humbling how far it seems like you've come. I mean, it seems like you've got a pretty stable life considering.
I mean, it still takes work to move through it, but I feel I've come a long way.
For me and for our viewers, just to get this out of the way, because everyone's probably thinking about it, whatever you're comfortable sharing, do you currently have a relationship with your father or your siblings? Do your siblings have their own independent lives?
Oh, that's a good question that I didn't even think about getting to. No, I have absolutely no relationship with my immediate family. That happened because here recently, and this is when I moved out, my parents hit financial binds, and I offered to have them stay with us. And this was, my son was very young at the time, not even a year. And my father kept a good control over it, and I always wanted to have a good relationship with my father. It was very important to me. But it came to a head when he was living with us, because at this point he could not deal with the fact that the control was not his anymore. And it came to a head, and he'd get really pissed off. He said that I took his what'd he say? Dignity. That I took his dignity by offering him a place to stay when they had nowhere to go. And he ended up picking a fight with me. And like I said, he knows how to trigger me. He knows how to piss me off. And he was hitting on a lot of that stuff. A big trigger to me now is saying that I don't care for my family. And he said that, and from what I understand, he meant that by I don't care for him and my mother, which I mean, still do to a point today. But when he said that, like being a new father with a wife and everything, when he said that, I was like, oh hell no. It's like I do. And now you better shut the fuck up. And a thing that he'd like to do when it was a way of peacocking when we were younger, is he would get right in our face and yell and scream in our face. And usually that was a precursor to a sucker punch. And he started doing that to me. It was in our garage, and I have a wood shop out there. And he did that in my face, and I shoved him. Because I told him like 3 different times, like, get the fuck out of my face, get out of my face, get out of my... And then finally I was like, enough. And because I knew it was coming, I shoved him. And at this point, I've been doing construction for a long time, so I do have pretty decent upper body strength. And he went back quite a bit, and he landed on my table saw. He didn't get hurt or anything, because I keep my shop very safe. The blades are always down. Everything's unplugged if they're not being used. But he made it a big fucking spectacle. And this is, again, with the narcissist. He's the victim. He's the victim here. He won't talk about how he initiated this, all the stuff he did. But he went back, and it was just me and him. He told my mother that I tried to kill him on the saw. And he told my brother and sister the same thing. And after this, it was, I was cut off from everyone. They moved out. I haven't spoke to my brother. Me and him were very close. I haven't spoke to my brother for the better part of 2 years now. My sister 3, my mom for 4, and my father for 4.
Eugene, I'm really sorry to hear about that. That certainly speaks to the awful collateral damage of having a narcissist in your life. My opinion, all in all, I think it's great that you don't talk to your father. When you have a narcissist in your life like that, sometimes all you can do is shut the door. And I really hope over the time, maybe relationships with your other family members will mend. But sometimes you just got to let that part of your life go, if it's toxic. Well,
yeah, because trying to mend a relationship that the other party doesn't want to have mended it's a fool's errand. And it's gonna drive you nuts. I mean, this is stuff I had to learn, like, pretty much on my own. I have my wife, and she talks to me a lot about a lot of this stuff, but it's a fool's errand, and it just leads to self-destruction. And this is what, again, like with Jamie, like, I feel that she had the same kind of shit. She was even a worse predicament because she had an addiction issue, and George was the only fucking option, and that led to where things are at now.
Yeah. Where do you think you'd be if your father had some sort of leverage over you?
When I was younger, he pulled the same kind of crap. When I didn't have good connections, like with other people, and I was homeless for a long time because of it. Like I said, I'm gonna be very honest here, and I'm sure, like George or any of them listen, they're gonna be like, "Oh, you were a homeless bum just like me." I'm like, "Yeah, I was. It was hard. But unlike
Yeah.
you, I don't waste my money. I was
Right.
smart with it.
Yeah, it seems important to note that it's totally possible for any given person to sink as low as George has, but the key is how you overcome conflict and challenges, and you seem like you've got it pretty together, all things considered. You've got a family, a roof over your head, a stable job, and George has been in the van for how many decades?
Yeah, I don't understand. I don't understand how someone could do that. And I say this to other people because I do talk with people who are struggling. I try to help, uh, which is again, I don't really talk about that on the show at all. I do a lot of work with people I'm close with who are facing issues and stuff like that. And I tell them, like, if it's going to come down to a homeless situation, do not waste your money on motel rooms. It is a fucking trap. You will be
Yeah.
stuck there living paycheck to paycheck, no matter what kind of job you have. You could have a decent paying retail job and you'll never be able to get out of that trap. Because that's what it is. Living in a hotel if you're homeless is a fucking trap. The best thing I'd say to do, get yourself a tent, learn how to fucking hide, and live off the land and save your money. Get yourself right.
Hopefully, if you live in a city big enough that has good civil services, there'd be a homeless shelter that a person could stay at. But I completely agree. The math of living out of a motel does not check out. So, when you got into Gorgeous George via prank access, how quickly did you recognize the narcissism?
Instantly. As soon as when it was on prank access, the way he acted with Kevin was the giveaway for me. How he would control when he talked. If he didn't like what Kevin was saying, he'd interrupt him. It reminded me exactly of the relationship between my father and my mother. And that's why I got a bit of a soft spot for Kevin. I know some people are like, oh, Kevin's just as bad. I mean, I see their point, but it's like, how much of that is just like a learned behavior now?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I'll always advocate Kevin and Roger because I think they're redeemable people, and maybe even Watt. I don't know him crazy well, but I think when you get caught in Gigi's circle of abuse, it's hard not to let that affect who you are and your outward appearance.
And they're so good at just honing in on how to fucking control you, man. And I hate to say that. I know George is an idiot. He really is. But I think in this one aspect, George is actually intelligent. And I hate to admit it, and I hate to say it. I think it was a product of his environment and growing up. He learned how to hone these skills. And like, I know I have issues with Roger, and I'm very outspoken about that on the show. The reason that I wanted to work with Roger and I was going to give him a spot on the show is to keep him away from fucking George. Maybe he could be decent. Maybe he could do something. But the moment Roger didn't get his way or didn't like how things were going, it's like, okay, dude, do what you want. It's like, I'm not gonna try to help you anymore. And we see where that is led now.
You brought up an interesting point about kind of how George had that learned behavior, and even Angela has also said that finding people's triggers is something George is good at. I think it's arguable that George learned all this stuff from his father and grew up to turn into his father. And that's a cliche that happens in our culture a lot, seems like. So you seemed like you went the opposite way of your father. And if you're able to put into words, growing up in such an unhealthy environment, how do you come out of that healthy?
I don't think anyone in an extreme situation as such comes out completely healthy. I do have issues. I'm very open about that, and I think part of growing and healing from it is admitting that you have these issues. But the reason that I didn't end up like my father, and I do have some traits of his, I will be honest with that, but being anything like my father is a nightmare, and a lot of that has to do with being a father myself now. The one thing that really it really is scary to me is ever being like my father was to my kid. That's the nightmare. So, and I remember like growing up, it's like this isn't normal. This isn't normal. I don't ever want to be like this. And just constantly reaffirming yourself that like this is not correct. This is not right. There's something wrong here. And never giving into the fact of like just because it's normal for you, it's normal. I think once you give into that mindset, that's when you end up being like the person that's raising you, instead of saying, hey, this isn't right, there's better ways, seeing better ways, and reminding yourself constantly that this is not the norm and that you need to break this fucking cycle. And like with my brother's a good person. He faces a lot of the same demons my father did. uh he's not to the same extreme. He is a very loving and caring person, but he struggles with a lot of the same issues, and I think that might have been an opposite experience where it did become normalized for him in some aspects.
Yo, yeah, okay. Well said. What advice would you give to someone who has found themselves in a circle of abuse with a narcissist and has their triggers figured out? What can a person do to get away from that?
It's very hard. The only thing I could say to that is just kind of give what I did. Like I don't think there's any surefire way. For one, you have to get sick of them enough. That's part of it. There has to be a breaking point somewhere, and you have to be willing to break all ties with this person, break all ties of the people that are associated with them, and that can be very hard. Uh, and when they hone in on your triggers or your insecurities, you need to. The best way to do it is to acknowledge and use that as a weapon on them. Call out your insecurities before they get to, so you're disarming them at that point.
Yeah.
To me, that's the only way to get out of it, because if you haven't worked through your insecurities and how to deal with them and to know that you have them and accept that, if you can't get past that part, the narcissist will be able to beat you into submission verbally.
Do you think Jamie could have done anything different to get away?
I'm gonna be honest. She was struggling through a lot of other stuff as well. Uh, I mean this in no negative way towards Jamie at all. I don't think she had a chance in hell, and I think George knew that, because not only like George in and of itself and dealing with a narcissist is a whole different ball game, but having an addiction to a very highly addictive drug as well, and that being carried on you as well, and then mixing it with the narcissist, there's no fucking way. She was doomed from the fucking start, and I think George knew it, and that was why he went after her the way he did.
I completely agree with George having that leverage over her. Being her de facto access to drugs made her rely on him. I know Jamie.
Well, I'm sorry.
No, please go ahead.
I would say even with like the being able to get her drugs and stuff like that, I don't think that was so much the issue. The issue I think was that she already had an issue with using drugs as an escape, and she was trying to kick it. She was getting on the right track. She got herself a job. She was making the strides, but then George came in and made her life so fucking miserable that she needed the fucking escape, and she went right back to what was comfortable. I think that's really what did it. I don't think it was so much getting the drugs, because there was the old man, there was boyfriends and stuff like that. She could have got it other routes aside from George.
Yeah, that's very fair. So, I know Jamie is a flashpoint for you. Is there anything, do you have any opinions on Jamie, that situation that hasn't been spoken out loud that you'd like to say?
I
And
feel
it's fine if the answer is no, but I wanted to give you the
I know
platform.
it's a common thing because like the being addicted to the drugs and the drug that she was on and the stuff in her past. Uh, I know because like with my father and his addiction to alcohol, which isn't the same. It's still you're physically dependent. It's still an addiction, but what she was addicted to was way worse. And I struggled with addiction myself with alcohol at one point. I kicked that, and now I only drink on the fucking Fridays.
Nice.
But yeah, with that, when you're addicted to something, especially with because she was on heroin, and when you're addicted to that, and I've done a lot of looking into it, you they call it chasing the fucking dragon for a reason, man. You can't. You'll do whatever it takes to get to the next thing because once you're off of it, the feeling, the physical addiction part, it hurts. It makes you sick. It makes you sweaty. You get the cold sweats. You get jitters, and you'll do anything you can to not have to fucking deal with this. So you'll do what you have to get to the next one. And they do some crazy, 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 fucked up shit, and they turn into monsters, man. And Jamie did some horrible stuff. I've heard, but again, man, that's the fucking monster of fucking addiction. And I'm not trying to justify the actions that she took. I think if she could have kicked it, which she was on the road to, I think we would have saw someone that would have tried to help other people get away from that shit. I think we would have saw a good person emerge, and that was robbed. And I don't think that's ever really talked about too much.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I completely agree. And I think a lot of people would agree that a person who is dealing with a hardcore drug addiction is not completely themselves. From accounts of people who personally knew her, it sounds like we lost a quality person in Jamie, and if she had gotten away from George and cleaned up, she probably would have been an advocate for the same things we advocate.
Mm-hmm. I think she would have been. I think she got away from George after dealing with him. She was able to get away, kick the drug habit. I think she'd be in this fucking Discord. I think that she would actively be trying to keep people away from him and be a strong voice in that. And that's something George would never accept and never understand. It would never even think as a possibility.
Yeah, I think he vehemently denies it, but I think he said the same general stuff about Angela. He's pretty off base with how people feel about him.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you see this Gigi saga going? Can you predict the rest of George's life?
He is going to. He's going to die a very, very lonely person. All of his so-called quote unquote friends that he has, deep down, no matter what George says, no matter what they say to him or what they say on YouTube, they fucking hate him. Kevin fucking hates him. Like Kevin may never admit it. He'll fucking deny it consistently. But the shit that George has done to Kevin, there's animosity there. And they'll get to a point, especially when George is in a weaker state, not able to get around, where he's more of a fucking crutch, where they have to fucking take care of him. They're gonna be done. They're like, I'm not dealing with your shit no more. That will happen at some point with Kevin. That will happen at some point with Roger, and that will happen with some point at Watt. He will not be able to operate his van anymore because he's going to lose his legs. He's going to be a horribly miserable old fuck living in a state nursing home that they'll put him in because he can't afford to be in a proper one. He'll be taken care of by the state, and he'll die, and no one will know.
Damn.
Everything he's tried to work for, every image of himself will all be forgotten. The only people that would carry on any kind of remembrance or think about George anytime, anywhere will be the goons, and it will not be nice things. It will not be pretty things.
Yeah.
And that will be George's legacy.
Brutal but accurate. Yeah.
He did it to himself.
That's on him.
He keeps talking about wanting to add people to new lawsuits and stuff like that. He'll never have the finances to do it. He's if he tries it again and files paupers and loses, he will become a fictitious litigant, and he won't even get that. Like, he thinks he's going to get a payday out of people, and he's not. If that's the route he's going to try to go, like his Hail Mary, it's going to blow up in his face just like it did before, and it's going to be even more devastating for him. But I think he is just narcissistic.
I gotta imagine.
And just egotistical enough to try it.
I gotta imagine at this point he's too scared to file a lawsuit. This day and age.
I don't know. I think he's deluded enough to do it.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you think he understands what a fictitious litigant is?
I don't think so. I don't think he understands anything legally at all. Like I said, I hate to say that he's smart in the aspect of being able to hone in on people's triggers, but I think that's all he's got. I think he's an idiot savant, and the only thing he knows how to do is fucking piss people off.
Mm-hmm.
That's my opinion.
Yeah, it doesn't make for a good quality of life.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, I'm not really great with the law either, because I don't think I'm even saying it right. Vexatious litigant?
Vectitious, I believe.
Vectitious. Thank you. I'm on the same level with George on that.
Oh, man, I'm not the greatest to go about it either. We've got goons who are way more knowledgeable than I am.
I would love to know what you think a fist fight with George would actually look like.
With who? Like with me? Or with like Deuce or Deus or Beatus?
With anyone, really.
With me, I think there would be. I know Deus has been trying to fight George for quite a while, and I think Deus would probably fuck him up to the point where he'd like beat him to the ground and back off. I'm be very honest. I mean, no disrespect to Tyler or Beatus Leg. I think he'd go nuts on him and really hurt him. Myself, I just want to slap him. I want to humiliate him. I don't want to hurt him. That's always been the case. I'm not too concerned about a fight with him. If me and him got into it, what I would do is probably just dance around his bloated ass and just like slap his gut and humiliate him. That would be because again, with a narcissist, that's the way to hurt him. If you actually physically hurt him, they'll play the martyr card and act like a victim. You got to hurt their ego.
Well said. So, Eugene, I would love to talk about the Fielden's podcast, if I may.
Yeah.
It's become a staple within this community in the Gorgeous George saga. Congrats to you three for doing that and putting on such a great show. I say confidently, everybody really enjoys that and looks forward to it every week. What advice do you have for people as far as being a good co-host? Because your chemistry with Matt and Lewis is so great, and it's great to see you two interact together. What's the secret to that?
To me, and this is a very big thing, and I always stress this, and it's about a word. I don't call anyone a co-host. Like, I'm not the host and a co-host. We are partners.
Okay.
We are what we work as a team. If we all agree with it, we do it. If someone doesn't agree, we don't do it. Uh, no one is more important than anyone else. Everyone has their strengths, and it's important to me to foster that kind of attitude. And that's why, like I say in the community, quite frankly, it's not me, it's us. And I say that about anyone who watches us, anyone who does anything, who interacts at all with the podcast or the live stream. It we might be talking, you might be hearing us, but this show is only able to be done by the viewers, the other goons, because we use a lot of other people's content. We use a lot of like George Jared has a negative bank account, a lot of Sean's stuff, and they let us, and we talk about it and respond to it and react. And like again, I know fair use is a thing, but they're very supportive. They talk with us. It's not us. It's the whole community, and I can't stress that enough. And I think with a lot of like bigger podcasters, and this isn't in the Goon universe, like just in general, I think they lose sight of that, and I think they forget that.
Yeah, that's very humble of you to say. We all do really enjoy Fielden's and really enjoy being a part of it, commenting and watching. It's a lot of fun. What is the process, if you don't mind pulling back the curtains? What's the prep process with you and your partners for that Friday night stream? You've said before that it takes a lot of work.
Yeah, Lewis does the impersonations. Like he actively works on like the Roger and the Simon and stuff like that. And we talk about new bits with that. The way, and I hate to say it, the way that we kind of described it is with the three of us is very similar to like the way Howard Stern show used to be, where I would set up like the technical shit. Like Fred did the characters and the impersonations and stuff like that. And then, Robin was kind of the voice of reason and stuff like that. And I know Meth's going to get pissed. Like, I'm not Robin. I get that to a point. But it's very similar to how that works. Whereas I'll go through, I'll do all of like the Streamlabs stuff. I'll get all of the segments set up. Meth does most of the research on the George show. She'll find out which one it is, how it makes sense, where it ties in with the timeline, make sure that everything is set up the way it needs to be. And Lewis does a lot of like the character bits and stuff like that. Everyone adds to it. Like I set up all the scenes on the StreamYard. I'll set up sets. I'll try to talk with people if we're trying to get guests, talk with them, get time set up for that. So it's like every single one of us is an important part, and it would not be the same show if one of us were missing.
So for anybody out there considering becoming a content creator, because like I said earlier, I think it's so awesome that this community has so many people making content about essentially one guy, but it's also unique and there's not much repeated content. What advice do you have for someone for starting a channel and kind of finding their voice?
First off, the first thing is you got to actually really enjoy and care and love what you're doing. Like, I don't love or care for George, but I do love and care for telling the story about George, going in and commenting on him. It's something I do enjoy. There is enjoyment to that. So you have to have the enjoyment factor in it. And once you get that, the rest is really easy because you're going to want to get better. Like with me on the Streamlabs stuff, I actively am learning. I'm putting forth a lot of effort. So there's that. If you're trying to start out, find a topic that you like to do. I would also, if you're doing, like, I'm not going to talk on videos, so I don't really do those too often, but on the streaming, find someone that you can laugh with. Find someone that you can have a good time with and talk with them on the stream as if you're just talking in a normal phone call. That's what they don't, from what I've noticed, viewers don't want to see like forced communication. They
Mm-hmm.
want to see it natural. They want to see like a friendship, and I have that. I feel that I have that with both Meth and Lewis. So it just everything comes out very natural. There's no scripting. There's no rehearsing. It's what you see is what you get. It's three people who enjoy each other's company, laughing and talking about George, and that's really just the basis of what the show is. Uh, Also, with this type of content, you have to have a thick skin. Like you cannot be thin skinned with this because you are going. The people that you talk about, they are going to fight you. They're going to try to find anything they can say to make you mad. They're going to do things to you that are going to piss you off. Uh, you got to be able to deal with that, and you also have to, yeah, you have to be able to deal with that in the best way that you can. Uh, like yelling, screaming, fighting with people, especially a local, just that makes you look like a fool too. I know I kind of dabble in that a bit when I call them out and they fucking prove their points fucking wrong consistently. But again, that's part of the character that I play on the show.
Great. Well, that leads perfectly into my next question. When someone puts themselves out on the internet, what's the key to having that thick skin, to not taking everything so personally and reacting so immaturely? It seems like when you do make yourself a quote-unquote public figure, there's pretty much two different ways you can go, and we've seen so many examples in this community where, you know, you've had recent interactions with other people where each of your responses of criticism are starkly different. So what advice do you have for people who are going to put themselves out there? And
the best thing that I could say is, oh man, that's actually kind of a hard question because, like you said, I do respond to criticism from different people differently, and it has to do with how their criticism is being displayed. Like with George, George is just a fucking idiot. He doesn't know what he's talking about half the time. So it's like I don't really fucking care. Call me whatever you want because you're an idiot and you don't know what you're talking about. Same with Roger and Watt. Like with the Simon shit, and I don't really want to talk about him too much because there's issues going on there right now. But with the Simon stuff, my responses with him are a bit different because he is actually unstable. He is a bit scary, to be honest. So I'm a bit more direct and a bit more firm with him. And I am very much about disarming him if he thinks he has something on me. That's why I deal with him. And then we have the CA Canoodles, which that criticism was a bit different in itself because that's someone I do respect them as a creator. I may not like what they do. It's not my thing, but that's another creator who does not understand kind of the technical aspects of how YouTube works. So I'm a bit more forgiving with that as well. But in order to get yourself a thick skin, the best thing I could say is find a group of people that you respect. Always be honest, be open with them, and allow them to criticize you and criticize you harshly. Like I do respect the Goons, every single one of them, very, very much. And there have been a couple times when I first came in a while ago, I'd say some pretty stupid shit, and they would criticize the shit out of me for it. And that was a good learning. But also I have other like in real life friends as well that we roast each other. So
yeah,
it just kind of comes with it. But yeah, so that would be my recommendation. To, like, allow people to criticize you, be open to listen to it, and take it, even if they hurt your fucking feelings with it. And allow people to hurt your feelings. Like, tell them it's okay. Be harsh.
oh, absolutely. Even though it can be hurtful, criticism is a great way to learn and to improve. And I also, when I first came into Discord, I've been fortunate enough to trade some messages with Mark, and he was actually super helpful with helping me kind of integrate into the community. And
oh yeah,
it wasn't that he gave me mean
Mark
criticism.
is awesome.
Yeah, he really is. He has a good beat on how to really become a productive member of the community and how to learn everything about the saga. He's been very helpful, and Mark's a smartass, and he's given me shit for dumb things I've said before, and it was all in good fun. And I totally echo what you say. This is a really respectful community, and we can rib each other, but it's all in good fun. And I think everybody appreciates helpful criticism to make their content better, and it's kind of contrary to like a CA Canoodle, which is an interesting situation to me. And I'm not trying to do a deep dive into that and bring it back up if it's resolved, but for someone like that who does a YouTube stream and is not used to having too much interaction and then receives criticism from someone they don't really know, I mean, how do you have any advice on how a person reacts to that positively? And
like
in contrast to how negatively she did?
Okay. I think,
like, what should she have done, I guess? What would have been a good response from her when you came into the comments and criticized her?
Well, my big thing is I just wanted to get in contact with her. She wanted to move it to DMs, which she did because she messaged me. I was like, okay, I'll stop. And that was the thing. Like I said, I'll stop. I didn't mean to be offensive to you. And she kept going on like, you're being a piece of shit. You're being a piece of shit. And then we'll just keep doubling down on it. I'm like, it's under the counter. Sorry about that.
You're good.
Who broke that?
But yeah, it was just right out the gate. She was just kind of an ass, and it's like, I don't think she understood my intention behind it. I think she was looking at it as like, because I know Roger and her had a conversation, and Roger talked about having the trolls, and they were dickheads and everything else. So she was already primed. And when that happened, I think that she was just ready to fucking go and didn't truly understand what my point was and what I was trying to do. I was not trying in any way to hurt her. And had she just been like, hey, please don't do this in my comments. Can we talk here? It would have all been avoided. But she didn't want to do that. And I think that was like her first time having to deal with someone who was like actively saying stuff that she didn't want to hear. And it just went fucking downhill. And like, I understand that. I get it. And that's why I don't really hold any kind of ill will towards her. Like even after the strike shit, because like she dropped it. Like she says her management did it, but she dropped it. I don't.
Oh, okay. So is that situation fully resolved?
Yeah, that's all resolved. It's all resolved now. I'm not gonna like it. It was uneducation and misinformation that got dealt with, and I feel I have to ask her how she is. I feel that a positive interaction came out of it. At the end of, like, the start of it was negative, the end of it was positive. We can both walk away. And me and her also had talks through my comment section of maybe having a stream together at some point, talking about our opinions, not the law, but our opinions on DMCA and how it could be improved or what's wrong with it. And I told her that's something I'm interested in. If she is too, we can talk about it. And it's looking like she might be interested. I haven't heard back yet.
Oh, that sounds super interesting. Are there any opinions you want to preview regarding DMCA?
I think the rules are good as they are. I think there needs to be better enforcement on false flagging.
It seems like there's pretty minimal
and that's a
consequence.
YouTube thing, not a law thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a very weaponized tactic. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I just think that'd be really cool. Well, Well, thank you for answering a bunch of questions about Fieldens. I really do try to keep this podcast psychology related because it's otherwise just a copy of the True Narrative podcast, which I'm trying not to do. So my apologies to TNP and Mark, but I think Fielden's is just so cool. So thanks for chatting on it.
Like I think you guys, it's enjoyable to watch both of your guys' stuff for different reasons. Like you guys are, it may be a podcast, you may ask questions of your guest, but how I'm feeling is it is two different shows, and I think it's enjoyable for both of them. So like I watch both of you guys.
I really appreciate that. So, gliding back into psychology, can you give a psychological breakdown of a troll in general? And do you think trolls are obsessed?
Okay, now this is a big one because I do have feelings about this. I feel that there are different, and it's generational. I feel that there's different types of trolls. You have some of the old school ones, and like when George was prevalent, that's where the old school trolls came in, the goons, and it was always for a laugh. Like they didn't want life ruination. They wanted to prank them and fuck with them a little bit and get a laugh out of it. That's where I like to hang out. And then you get into like, we'll say that's the George like era trolls and goons, and then you get into stuff like Chris Chan and Wings of Redemption and his trolls. And there's a lot of trolls that are very similar to like how we operate. We're just there for the laugh, just want to see him do something stupid and kind of laugh at him. And then you had a mix of like, they call them A-logs, where they want to see the subject suffer. They want to cause the suffering. They take it to a level that it does not need to go. And that is where you get trolls like Blue Spike in the Chris Chan stuff, or Isabella Janke. Those type of trolls, to me, they are horror cows, is what they are. They actively want to hurt this person. Like Blue Spike was the one that convinced, through a lot of like psychological manipulation, Chris Chan to shove his Sonichu medallion up his butt and they got a recording of it.
Wow.
So do I think trolls are obsessed like in the Goon era? I wouldn't say obsessed. I think they just find George kind of fascinating with how he responds and how he reacts to things. Does he control their lives? No, not in the least bit. I do think that on different locales, there are people who are obsessed. Like let's take in, for example, Chris Thurston, and he is obsessed with Jared Genesis, and that is a troll obsessed with the locale, like to a point of like life ruination and stuff like that. That's where Chris wants to go with him, and that is a form of obsession. I think Blue Spike was obsessed with Chris Chan to a point of wanting to cause him physical pain. And then you had Isabella Janke, who was obsessed with Chris Chan, who was not so much obsessed with him, but wanting to be the king troll and get this locale to kill themselves. That was their end game. And I cannot stand trolls like that. I think it's disgusting. I think it's horrible.
Yeah, that seems over the line. Are those traits that Simon exhibits?
Yes, 100%.
Okay.
Simon would be a troll that would go over the line if he was successful. He would continue to try to push it for fame and clout. He would want to be noticed for the shit that he's doing. That's very important to him. So he would always try to one up the last thing that he did, and he would push it to a level that would be tragic.
Okay, yeah, I'm still getting into all the Simon stuff that's going on. Another thing I love about this community is that people like that don't seem to last long here.
Oh no, not at all. We have very good moderators in this Discord that can spot that shit a mile away and be like, "Oh fuck, no." And that's
So,
another
Eugene,
thing that's another thing. Like George should be fucking thankful to that shit, because in a way, the fucking goons protect his ass from people like fucking Blue Spike and Isabella Janke. Like he's really fucking lucky with the group of fucking quote unquote trolls that he has.
Yeah, that's something I've never really considered. That's super interesting. All things considering, trolls are the goons rather are pretty cordial with George, especially considering his atrocities. I mean, if he had a horror cows, as you called them, going after him, what do you think his realistic consequence would be? Would his story have an ending like Chris Chan's? Out there and morally disgusting.
I think with George, the type of like, I know we talk about like going to Virginia and stuff like that, and I still am planning to do that. But
me too.
Like the fight shit, like that's all a joke. I mean, would I get into a physical scuffle with George? Fuck yes, I would. I'd slap his gut around and laugh at him. I think most of us are in that realm. No one wants to fucking kill George. No one wants to really fucking hurt him. But I think that would be the type of fucking troll, the obsessive troll that he would get. Someone that actually wants to fucking meet up with him and seriously hurt him. I think George would be murdered, more than likely in his van at night. That would be that's where I think it would go if someone was able to get through the cracks like that.
Yep. I agree. I mean, with how much threatening he does, he's just inviting somebody to come seriously hurt him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, an interesting opinion, but it may be fair to say that George has the goons to thank for what semblance of safety he has.
He'll never admit it, though. That, again, the narcissism won't allow it. You won't be able to look at the good side of something, even if it is negative towards him normally. He's got goddamn, essentially, and if he wanted to look at it in a positive note, like Jay Smith and fucking Henry Mitchell, he's got guardian angels, essentially. Yeah, they fuck with him, but
yeah,
they fucking look out for his ass.
Seriously. George should really be thinking.
Usually you got to pay for a fucking service like that, but George don't see it that way.
Oh man, if I were in any kind of trouble, I would openly pay to have Henry and Jay looking after me, watching my every move. Well, Eugene,
I want to end on an anecdote here.
Please,
going in with Jay Smith and Henry Mitchell. If George really wanted to look at it in a positive way, let's say one of those like trolls that would take shit too serious fucking found him in his van, and let's say that was a night, let's say Henry or Jay was watching him, and something happened to George, like he was seriously hurt, put to the hospital. Who do you think would be the witness to that? Who do you think would be making sure that you got some kind of justice off of that shit? It would be one of them, fucking probably begrudgingly fucking backing up George. He talks a lot of shit and has a lot of hatred for these people, man, but I just don't think he understands that it's, in a way, it's a good thing for him. He's got his own security team, doesn't even fucking realize it.
Yeah, I mean, it's the goons are the only people who are consistent in his life, however much he wants to paint that as a negative. Without the goons, without Henry and Jay, he'd have very minimal human contact on a day-to-day basis.
Yep. Be honest, nothing I can think of. I mean, I think your questions were well thought out, and I think we covered most things I could think of, to be honest.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Eugene, for being on the podcast. It was very enlightening, and I think people are going to really enjoy listening to it and respecting your candor regarding your background. And
well, I mean, I like the goons, and I like to be honest with them and give them the straight up true shit. So
Yeah, keep up the good work with Fielden's. Everything else you're doing.
I'll do my best.
All right, everybody. That was the Goon profile of Eugene the Magnificent. Thank you for listening and have a great day.